Hi, today I thought I'd show you how we can cut some 60-degree diamonds. Now that might sound a little scary, but they just look like this. And diamonds are a girl's best friend, so they say. So the 60-degree bit comes in on this internal angle here. This is a 60-degree angle. And I don't want to confuse you all with maths, and I'm definitely not a maths guru. However, I do know that with a four-sided shape, all the internal angles need to add up to 360 degrees. So on a 60-degree diamond, this is 60 degrees, this is 60 degrees. So added together, those are 120 degrees. And these opposite sides, these ones each are 120 degrees. They're actually double this. So that means 120 plus 120 is 240 plus another 120, and we've got to 360. So we know that our shape is going to work, and as I said, all four-sided shapes add up one way or another. So we want them to be fairly even, we want them to work together for patchwork. So I just thought I'd show you how you can cut some of these shapes. So all you need to have, you can buy templates and rulers that are particularly for 60-degree angles. However, many of us have rulers that have markings on that perhaps we hadn't thought about using. So I have my own rulers here, and these have 60-degree lines, 45, 30-degree, and this is a ruler that many of you will be familiar with, the OmniGrid rulers. They have a lot of angled marks and things on them as well. So I'm just going to show you with the OmniGrid ruler because it's probably easier for you to see. Even their smaller ruler that I have here has those same markings on. So you'll find that very likely you've already got all the tools you need to cut 60-degree diamonds, and you probably didn't even know that. So I'm just going to use my cutting board to help me a little bit here, because cutting boards also have a lot of markings on them. So very often they have these diagonal lines that come in at 45 degrees from a straight line there. But this one also happens to have some markings here with different angles. So that's also going to help us line things up. So I'll show you how you might use those to your advantage. Because most of us have a lot of these tools, as I said, and we don't necessarily realise that we even have them half the time. So I've got myself a strip here, so I'm going to cut some diamonds, the same size as I've got up here on my wall. And I've started with a 4.5-inch wide strip of fabric. So I'm just going to lay that on my border, and I like to lay things so that they run along one of the long lines on the board so that I know everything is sitting straight. And then I'm going to take the ruler here, and I'm going to take this line here. This one here says that it's 60 degrees. It's intersecting with one going the other way, but this angle is a 60-degree angle. So I'm going to use that angle now. I'm going to turn that round here, and that 60-degree line I'm going to line up on the bottom edge of my strip here. And I'm just going to bring it in there like that, and I'm just going to lay that right along that edge so that yellow line follows the edge of this yellowy coloured fabric, and I'm just going to cut that angle up there. So we know everything's sitting straight and square because we've squared it up on our board, we've squared our ruler up with the 60-degree, and now I need to cut another line opposite that which will be parallel to that. That means it's running exactly in the same direction and equal distance apart. And I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to come back over here onto the markings on my board, and again I'm going to line my fabric up. So I've got this line here that tells me that it's at 60 degrees from up here, so that's the line I want to follow. And if you lay your fabric along one of these lines on the board, you'll see that that actually lines up with that line. So far we're doing pretty well. So now what I need to do, because I know that my strip was 4.5 inches wide, I need to cut these other two lines so that they're also 4.5 inches wide. So I don't need the angle now except to keep things straight. I just need to know where 4.5 inches sits on my ruler. So I'm going to line up the 4.5-inch line, which is halfway between 4 and 5, right on the edge of that fabric that I've previously cut. So that sits there, and because I've laid it on that angled line, I can line that line up a little bit further than just the fabric to make sure everything is sitting nice and straight. Now that line doesn't go forever, but it does go a bit further than the fabric. So I'm lining that up there, it's sitting nice and straight, and now I can cut the opposite side there. And what I've ended up with, really quite simply, is a 60-degree angled diamond. And I think that that's kind of fun to be able to do that. and we can have a little bit of a play with how we set things together, and I'll have a little bit more of a play in a minute. I'm just going to cut a couple more though. I want to cut one out of the dark fabric because I want to be able to show you what you might do with them. Now I've already got a line on here because I'd already cut that one from this strip before, and I'm just going to lay that now. I've cut it round the other way obviously, line that up here with my line up my strip, and I'm going to come, whoops, round the other way, sorry, line that up with my strip, line it up with the line on my board so that everything's sitting nicely there, and again come in 4.5 inches onto that cut edge, and I'm just going to cut that line there. So there's another one for us. That's looking pretty good so far. Probably not exciting in that array. And now what I wanted to do was just have another little, just to show you another little thing. You might want to be cutting a lot of these, in which case you might want to lay more than one fabric together, and I would normally have cut those together. So I'm just going to trim that edge again with my 60-degree line running along the bottom here. I've lined them up with that, but you can lay two together. So usually when I'm putting two strips together to cut something, particularly a more specific shape like this, I would iron one strip out flat on my ironing board, and then I would lay the next strip on top and also iron that right on top so that everything's sitting together, and it just helps them sit together quite nicely. So I'm just going to trim that little edge off to make sure that those edges are the same. I've got my 60-degree line running along the bottom edge of my fabric. Trim that little bit, turn that around, line it up with my angled line here on my board, and also that edge along one of the lines on the board, and then come along my 4.5 inches and cut that there. So you can do this with several different size strips. I might just quickly show you exactly the same process on a couple of other sizes. I'll show you those in a minute. So I've got a wider one here, a 6.5 inch strip. So that's sometimes a little bit more of a challenge when things are a little bit wider, but I think we can do it. So same thing, I'm lining that up with my lines on my board. I'm going to line my 60-degree line up there, and just make sure that your ruler is long enough. Some of us work with short rulers sometimes. Cut a line up there, because you might have different size strips, you might be making a different size project. The cutting is the same process, because we're just cutting to whatever the width of our strip is basically. So I'm going to line that up again with that 60-degree line on my board, line up my fabric, straight edge with the lines on the board, and I'm just going to now come, oops, my ruler's not wide enough. Now what am I going to do? Get a wider ruler. So some rulers are wider if you're going to work with 6.5 inch strips, and this is why I've done this. This ruler is 6.5 inches wide. Sometimes we're a little bit short. So sometimes you've got a different size ruler for something, or you could have just measured along and come up with 6.5 inches. But I thought I'd just show you that this can happen. So we might need to position that so we can't cover every part of the line there. But I know that this is 6.5 inches wide, my strip is 6.5 inches wide. So very often, once we've done that first cut, which you don't need the wider ruler for, there's a way around doing the next cut. You might have a much longer ruler, in which case that's fine too, you can work out different things. So that's just a much larger diamond. Same sort of dimensions though, staying with the 60-degree angle here, but a different size. And then these days a lot of us like to work with 2.5 inch strips. So I just thought I'd show you, it's the same process, but just to make sure that you can use up all those nice bits and pieces of fabrics that you've got sitting in your cupboards. So I've lined up my 2.5, so we have, a lot of us have 2.5 inch strips, and you can cut them with the 2.5 inch strips just the same, they're just smaller. So I've got my 60-degree line along the straight edge of the fabric, cutting that off there, turning it around, lining it up, and this time, because it's a 2.5 inch strip, I'm just coming in 2.5 inches. So then I've just got a smaller diamond. So how fun is that? We can just about do anything. And then there are lots of things you can do with these diamonds, but just one quick little idea just might be working with 2 colours. You could work with many colours, but I've just got 2 today. And you might make a star type shape. So it'll be a 6-pointed star, of course, with this size diamond. Because 6 60s make 360. So even though we're not actually mathematicians, we use quite a lot of maths in quilting, and don't be frightened by it. It all kind of works out. There is quite a lot of maths in quilts. So that's just an example of something you might make using a 60-degree diamond. There's other things, and this is just one of several videos that I'm doing. We're going to be showing you some different ways of cutting, and or not so much different ways of cutting, but different sizes, different things that you can do with some of these diamonds. So come back and have a look for the next video. Thank you.